And now, it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. A very happy Tuesday to everybody out there. Kalani Watch Day 2 underway. And let's not waste any time. Let's go out to our air link, which means you can also see him on YouTube, our YouTube channel, or you can find him on Twitter at Mitch_Harper. It is our BYU Insider, Mitch Harper. What's going on, Mitch?
Busy times, Ben. It's always exciting, with Big 12 football championship game and this and signing day. Busy week.
It's 10:06 right now. Where is BYU with Kalani Sitake? Do you feel like we have updates up to the minute on what's going on? Have things changed this morning?
Nothing's changed too much. I think the biggest thing is that BYU is 100% committed to try to get Kalani Sitake retained. This is not some thought of let Kalani walk to bring in Jay Hill to be the head coach. They want to retain Kalani Sitake and keep him because they feel like Kalani Sitake is the perfect man for BYU.
So along those lines, and I know there are rumors that BYU is willing to increase pay, coaches pool, NIL, facilities, all these different things, which is essentially what Penn State has been offering. Do you know if it's the goal would be to 100% match what Penn State threw out there, because the rumor was $10 million a year at least? I mean, do you know what level BYU is willing to go to match what the offer would be?
Position BYU to be in a place where they can be, one of the top programs in the Big 12 in resources and be an annual contender. I think, when Kalani Sitake, it's not solely a specific dollar amount that he needs. Anytime that he's pursued this sort of thing, 2021, when BYU got invited to the Big 12, he looked for a contract extension because he was getting interest from Oregon and Washington, but he ultimately wanted to be at BYU. I mean, through all this, Kalani has been underappreciated at BYU at times. He's nowhere near the highest paid coach in the Big 12. Get him to a level where that says, one, he's taken care of, his staff's taken care of, and this program is, in fact, the winningest in the Big 12 in the 16-team era. Start acting like it. And I think BYU sometimes gets a little reactionary in moments, but BYU's committed to make BYU one of the tops in the Big 12.
So along those lines, do expectations have to change with Kalani if they do retain him and the cost goes up and the resources go up and the investment goes up? Does it change what the belief is and what he has to accomplish, or is what he's done over the last 2 years kind of the bar he just has to continue to meet?
Of course, he's got to continue to level it up, and because Kalani wants to get to a national title. That's the whole purpose of it all. Where sometimes people get upset about these college football playoff committees and how they view BYU. I think sometimes fans view BYU the same way and think there's a ceiling. Kalani's looking to break that ceiling. He's done it throughout his time at BYU in the 10 years he's been the head coach. No one thought they could win big road games against ranked teams. He's done that. No one thought they could unseat Utah as the top football program in the state. He's done that. Kalani has reinvented with the brand of what BYU football is. The Big 12's helped that, but Kalani has matched that, and he's leveled the program up. He can continue to break through the ceilings and get BYU to heights. This is all in an effort to get BYU in a position to where they can become a national title contender, not just a Big 12 champion, be one of the premier brands in the Big 12, but become a program that can go chase national titles. That's the big picture to all this. That's what Kalani wants to accomplish at his alma mater. BYU sometimes a little reactionary, not always forward thinking, because you could have saw the dominoes coming potentially. With all these coaching carousel openings back in September and October, there's always a ripple effect that could tie back to Kalani Sitake. And, the cliche narrative from national media when they say, oh, it's not a fit for Kalani Sitake at State College or Penn State. No, he'd be a fantastic fit because he can connect with anyone regardless of their social, economic backgrounds. I mean, I've seen every step of the way of Kalani Sitake's career at BYU from the moment he had his press conference nearly 10 years ago this month in the BYU broadcasting building to now. The type of players that he's had were guys that I've never thought in my wildest dreams BYU could get in there because of their backgrounds and things like that. It's because of Kalani in many respects, because of the culture that he's built. That can translate in this retention era of college football to any program. And the resources that Penn State could provide him, he could absolutely win big there. Now, would he win to the level that they expect by always getting national championships and Big Ten titles like the Ohio States of the world and now Indiana's? I don't know about that, but he would always be in the mix. And so I think that, Kalani, but to his soul, BYU football lives in him. And it's not unauthentic. It's not just a front, an entertainment ploy. BYU football is Kalani Sitake. And that's why he's the perfect man for this BYU program. And they've got to keep him at all cost. So
why was he listening to Penn State?
Because, again, sometimes he's been underappreciated. You look at the long-term extension last year, BYU didn't disclose for the first time ever an extension of what the length of that terms were. And, that was something that was kind of a little bit strange, where, again, it was never viewed as a extension that put him in the upper tier of the Big 12 in terms of salary. Coach Prime, big, huge celebrity, I think a really good football coach too, but he steps into Boulder and instantly gets, $8.5-9 million. Why isn't Kalani getting that after a guy that's grinded and done a lot in his decade at BYU, where he first starts out, getting handcuffed with Ty Detmer as the OC in an effort to get this job and execute the vision that he had for the program? There's been some ups and downs. He's had to navigate independence, but in the Big 12 era, he's really taken this thing off to great heights. And so understand, hey, if you're not going to pay me and pay my staff to the level that I think is fit for a program that, again, is the winningest in this iteration of the Big 12, well, now I have to kind of listen to my options. And the thing is, Kalani Sitake is a massive college football fan, and he would connect with that Penn State fan base, and he sees the brand of that. I mean, it's all strategic too. I mean, this guy doesn't just do things uncalculated. He would talk to places that would be an actual potential fit. And with a crazed fan base like Penn State, I think he would totally work there. They'd probably hate it at first, but then they hear the guy and they'd probably love him. So I think you got to listen all the time. Sometimes you get underappreciated in these jobs. It happens, even in our line of work sometimes. It's like you got to listen to these opportunities. And I think Kalani was rightfully so to listen to this out. And I think it can work out in the end for BYU. But I think this is also the moment, too, where it lets the fan base know that at times I think they've underappreciated Kalani too. Not everyone, but I think pockets of the fan base have thought, oh, Jay Hill could be instantly better. And I think Jay Hill would be a fantastic coach. I remember 10 years ago, you and I were on a show back in another life. And I remember saying the top two candidates, not Ken Niumatalolo, it was Kalani Sitake and Jay Hill. Mm-hmm. Now these two together, it's an incredible tandem. And Jay Hill would be a fantastic head coach at BYU, really anywhere. But Kalani is the perfect guy because he just embodies everything that the program has to offer. And I think there's a lot more for him in his coaching career. But I think this also is that point that says, kind of in the same breath as Kevin Young, like, oh, we got a head coach that turned down Penn State. Kevin Young had maybe NBA opportunities that he could have pursued. That's been a big thing. Like, hey, we got a head coach, BYU does, in that turned down the NBA to be at BYU. Now that moment's there for Kalani where, the Oregon talk that was there, but it's kind of a little bit of gray areas. Like, did they offer, did they fully give him everything like Penn State's, making him a top priority? This would be a big win for BYU to say, hey, we got a coach that was wanted by a Big Ten blue blood, and he stayed at BYU. This is your guy of the future to take BYU to even greater heights than what they've been in the first 3 years in the Big 12.
What do you think the expectation is for Kalani if he continues to win at this level at BYU? He gets paid, he gets this commitment this year, and next season USC comes calling, or Washington comes, or at some point Dan Lanning leaves and Oregon comes. Like, do you think BYU is going to be comfortable if this happens over and over, or do you think Kalani is going to be more selective with that with the teams he's willing to talk to?
Well, I just think those programs, I mean, West Coast football, why can't BYU be better than those programs? Washington, it's a good program, but I mean, they've been really good this year at home, and like no one talks about them. They're just kind of forgotten in the Big Ten. Same to some extent with USC. I think BYU can be one of the great programs out West. I think they can. They got that ability. They've got the fan base. They've got the support to do that, where consistently BYU fans always show up. And that's one of the rare things out West anymore. I think this whole state does that with college football, where no matter what, these programs, these fan bases show up for college football. And that's a huge thing, especially in the NIL era and rev share. You're going to have inspired fan base. I mean, the reaction from people just on social media to this sort of move, like BYU fans it says a lot when a coach potentially leaves, and then, just the support that comes out. And again, I think sometimes there's been pockets of the fan base that have underappreciated him, but I think, Kalani, to me, this would be a move where, okay, this you're locked in. Enough of the, extensions, now it's all in place to go forward. And hopefully this would be the move that says you're going to be that guy that you aspired to be when you first took this job, the Polynesian Lavelle Edwards. That would be the thought here with this type of move.
Do you think he's going to coach for 10 years? I mean, how long do you think Kalani wants to do this?
It's a good question. I mean, he's already 10 years in. I mean, I've kind of wondered this myself. I think anything beyond another 7 would be pretty, I don't say surprising, but that would be compared to what you see in today's landscape with coaches, that would be pretty shocking. I think if you can get another 5 to 7 years after this one, that'd be huge. And then that kind of coincides with this media rights of the Big 12 era and, whatever happens next in whatever, college football takes in the next form of the sport after the 2030s. But I'd say another 7 years at least.
I would imagine the quicker this gets wrapped up, either direction, the better for BYU. I mean, I guess unless he's leaving for Penn State, that would not be ideal for the conference title game. But you'd have to expect BYU wants this to be done today whenever to keep him, but today at the latest, so you can start focusing on the biggest game in 30 years for BYU coming up on Saturday?
No question. And signing day tomorrow, too. I mean, you got a top 25 recruiting class that needs assurances that you're their head coach, and they don't want to just sign officially and not know who the head coach is going to be. So this is critical, I think, for both programs to say, who are you going to sign with? It's time to move forward and get this thing done. So as soon as possible would be ideal here.
What do you think Penn State thought they were getting, not just Kalani as the head coach? Do you think they expected coordinators, players, that type of movement if they were bringing Kalani in?
Definitely. I mean, because when you're looking at this sort of operation at BYU, it's not just Kalani, it's the whole product of what he's producing. And you'd probably want him, and I'm sure Kalani being a man who loves his staff and the people that he works with. I mean, this was the dream staff that Kalani envisioned when he took the job 10 years ago. And it was a slow build to get here, but it then happened, and it's got a lot of head coaching experience. So yeah, I'd expect a lot of it to be the staff going with him too. Who that would be, that would be a big question, but I'm sure Jay Hill would be a big piece of that too. And that's where it would get interesting if Kalani left. Is it just a slam dunk to assume Jay Hill would be the head coach at BYU? I'd like to think that would be a better gig than being a defensive coordinator, but still, it's hard to argue. So, I mean, I think that would be it seems like, Penn State, with their resources and their commitment to their football program, they do whatever it takes. If they felt confident in a candidate, they would go the full distance to get whatever he needs to succeed.
How should BYU be feeling about going into this game against Texas Tech on Saturday?
It's a tall task, and Texas Tech, whether there was the coaching distraction or not, and I believe it completely is. I know Kalani said it's a good thing, and I don't know if I can really get on board with that, because whenever there's uneasiness and uncertainty in college football programs, other teams are going to pounce and then start contacting agents and try to put out feelers of, hey, this could be out there in the portal if your coach leaves. And that creates uneasiness, and that takes away from just any sort of the normal routine and what happens in the workflow of a given week. So it's definitely a distraction, but I think Texas Tech is a huge challenge, even if BYU didn't have this distraction. And it's going to take a massive effort by BYU to get this done, because I think, I've been covering BYU since 2014 on the beat, and this is the best defense I've seen BYU go up against. There's been some good ones, even before 2014, 2009 Oklahoma, some of the Utah defenses. I think Texas Tech's the best defensive front BYU's faced in the last 10, 11 years. And they are for real. And I think when Kalani Sitake says they are the best team in college football, I think they're right there. I think at a minimum, they are the third best team in the sport. So this is going to be a massive effort by BYU to get this done. I think that they've got to be able to have the quick passing attack working for them in this game. They can't just solely rely on LJ Martin to get this done. I mean, LJ's got to be huge. He's got to at least get 100, but they've got to be able to have a quick passing attack that can also almost act as a rushing attack too, to maybe pick up some, 3-4 yards to get you in 2nd and 6, because they had never had any 2nd and manageables. It always felt like it was 2nd and 10, 2nd and 9, and they were always behind the sticks. Just be in a manageable situation and try to get some methodical drives to eat up some time. And they got to get some chunk yardage too. I think that having a big play, pop off like they had last week where, Parker Kingston goes off for a 55-yard punt return instead of a muff punt, things like that where the complementary football comes into play. BYU's got to show that and then some against this Texas Tech team, who again, I think is like Kalani, I think is one of the best teams in the sport this year.
I've not hid my disdain for the college football playoff, not just because of, the ranking system and who's in and who's out and what it's actually designed to do, but because I think it does diminish great seasons if you don't make the college football playoff. And I think BYU has had a great season. If they don't make the college football playoff, how will this season be remembered and compared to other good seasons in BYU history?
It's a good question. I think that it would be viewed as a season where it wouldn't, I don't know if it would be viewed as in high regard as maybe last year. It's tough because I think it's one of the best teams in BYU football history, just like last year. I think it's better than last year's team, this group. But I just think now that you're at the championship game, and if you get left out, I think people will always just remember the fact that the committee hosed them. It would join the ranks of 1996 where, and over time, of course, 1996 is viewed as one of the great teams in BYU history, but they got turned down for the Bowl Alliance. It was Texas, 9-3 Texas that got picked instead of 13-1 BYU to go to the Fiesta Bowl. I mean, this is just the same song and dance every form of the postseason of college football. This happens to BYU. It's shocking. And that's why I don't understand why people outside the SEC Big Ten echo chamber do not want a 24-team playoff that has 4 automatic bids to every Power 4 league, because then you get the chance to truly determine how the strength of a conference is, because it gets played on the field. You have equal bids, automatic qualifiers for everyone, and then it's settled on the field. You want to say the SEC is the best league? Okay, settle it on the field and have these 4 Big 12, 4 SEC, 4 Big 10, 4 ACC, and 2 Group of 6. Play it all out, and then it all gets determined out there, because I think that would be the best thing, because I don't think many teams would want to face, BYU or Utah in a bracket. That would be a tough out, especially if they're at home. So that's what I want to see eventually with the sport, because if you can minimize the playoff committee, that's better. I mean, I asked directly, why is BYU to the playoff committee chairman? I asked him point blank, why is BYU behind 2 lost teams? And then he just laid out all these wins over ranked teams, which happened in September before their playoff rankings occurred. So they're obviously getting influenced by media pollsters, and those same media pollsters are the people that are saying, well, my process, I don't really, it's not that big of a deal. No, it is a huge deal. And it has these perceptions, and BYU has been the most underrated team and kind of disrespected team in the playoff era when it comes to rankings. So this is just the same song and dance. You'd have to think that BYU, circling back to this season, if they could win a bowl game, then it would be viewed as kind of a high note. But I think this year would be different from the postseason side of things, because there would not be as much motivation because of the letdown. Because last year you could kind of get up for Coach Prime, the Buffs. You didn't play in the Big 12 championship. This is the de facto people's Big 12 champ. You wouldn't have that this go around if you played USC in the Alamo Bowl, or you played an ACC team in the Pop-Tart Bowl. Maybe if you played Miami, maybe. But I just think that would not be as inspiring as, say, last year's situation.
Find him on Twitter at Mitch_Harper. Read all of his coverage at KSLSports.com, including the latest on Kalani Sitake, up to the minute, and whether he's going or whether he's staying. Mitch, really great stuff. Thanks for jumping on.
You bet. Take care.
There he is, Mitch Harper, our BYU Insider at KSLSports.com. Again, make sure and go read him. Follow him on Twitter to keep the latest. And you know what? Thing I don't talk about a lot. Subscribe to our push notifications, our text line, if you want to make sure you do get the latest stories as they break. Mitch is as good as anybody and better at getting them up online quickly and then getting them sent directly to your phone so you know the news as soon as it happens. You can do it all at KSLSports.com. All right, when we come back, top 3 stories at KSLSports.com. Stick around, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Time for the top 3 stories at KSLSports.com. It's all sponsored by Jay Brooks. Jay Brooks, cherish your loved ones with Jay Brooks Jewelers. Explore their expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials. Christmas is 3 weeks from Thursday. Man, go check out Jay Brooks Jewelers. You're looking for excellent options, whether it's an engagement ring, jewelry. They have it. Jay Brooks Jewelers, 2 locations up and down the Wasatch Front. Christian, where are we starting today?
Number 1, the big story, of course, Kalani watch, Ben, rolling into day 2. How long do you think this is going to go?
I think ideally it would be wrapped up yesterday. If not yesterday, we might as well do it today. I am curious. This feels so much like, with the irony of tomorrow being National Letter of Intent Day, it does feel like these last recruiting battles where you're hoping to get the final visit, and whoever ends up with the final visit feels confident that they're going to be able to ink that person because they can continue to up the bar. You know, they want to have the ball last in overtime so they know exactly how many points they have to score to win. I think that's what you're hoping for. And look, with where BYU is as a football team getting ready for Saturday, I don't think Kalani can be leaving town at this point. You know, he can't be disappearing to go be courted by Penn State for 24 hours, obviously. So whatever other final offer Penn State's going to be able to come back with probably is going to happen over the phone, over Zoom calls. And that doesn't mean they laid out all their cards right away. I'm sure they made an extraordinarily compelling offer. They would have had to pique his interest in the first place beyond it just being Penn State. They had to have a offer that wasn't just competitive, but was truly something that they didn't think BYU would be able to match. And once BYU threw down the gauntlet and said, hey, we're at least going to get this as close as possible or give you the tools to compete at the level we think you need to at BYU with the resources we can offer, it does seem like the winds have swayed back towards BYU's favor, or at least they're in the running once again, which I will tell you honestly, 24 hours ago at this point, I really felt like things were leaning heavily towards Kalani going. We played the press conference between Joey McGuire and Brett Yormark and Kalani yesterday, and Kalani did not address the issue directly. He said, it's a good thing. I'm with Mitch Harper. I don't understand how that would have been a good thing at all, that he's getting this type of interest. It does mean BYU's playing well, but this type of distraction is not necessarily a positive for the Cougars. But if that decision hasn't been made yet, I do think that probably means that BYU has at least made this competitive. And if it's competitive, does Kalani just lean with where he's comfortable, with what he knows, with what his love is for BYU, and decide to stay?
It's kind of a double-edged sword because the longer this drags out, I feel like is better for BYU in the sense of keeping Kalani Sitake. But at the same time,
why?
Because I think that is going to give them more time. As we heard yesterday, like even going throughout our show, it felt like Kalani was going to leave. And then by the end of the night, it felt like Kalani had met with, and it's all rumored, but met with members and boosters, and it seemed like BYU got all the financial resources together. So I think more time gives them, I guess, more time to do that, right? But at the same time, it's a distraction when you have this bowl game coming up.
I think if he's going to stay at BYU, he needs to put a pin in it today. In all honesty, I think
ideally, yeah.
If this is the plan and he's going to be here and BYU has lined up what their best offer is, because what's BYU not putting on the plate at this point? Are you going to hold off and say, well, let's go in for a second final visit and try and offer something on Thursday just in case? Like I can't imagine that would be the ideal approach to maintaining him or keeping him here in Provo. I think you had to lay out everything you could. You had to, circle the wagons yesterday to put the best offer available and understand that it was going to be countered by Penn State still one more time. And maybe Penn State can't offer anymore. I think if this drags on beyond today, it starts to get worse for BYU. I think if he doesn't say, look, I'm here, we're competing for a conference championship on Saturday. If we win, we're going to the college football playoff. This is exactly where I want to be. I know what type of money you're offering me. I think if this drags on beyond today, I would think that he's still very seriously considering Penn State, and I don't want that. If I'm a BYU fan, I don't want that. And it's been extraordinarily impressive what's happened over the last 24 hours and their ability to get these huge donors from these major companies located in our state to step forward, make public pleas. Obviously, there's way more happening even behind the scenes, upping his money, seemingly at a moment's notice to make sure he can stick around. I do get the feeling, and I've done this before, and this is a bit of a flawed comparison because I think Kalani's an absolutely excellent head coach, but have you ever bid for something on eBay?
Yeah, I love eBay.
And you kind of get to that final 6 hours where it's counting down, and you're like, ooh, if you had told me I was going to pay this amount for this product in the first place, I probably never would have put that initial bid down on it. Maybe you start at $25 and by the end you're at $100 and you're thinking, oh man, I would have just bought this for $90, but I never would have spent $100 on this product. I do wonder if we're getting into this arms race between Penn State and BYU where they're upping themselves to a cost that I'm not sure to what end it brings. Is BYU putting Kalani actually into a spot now to compete for a championship that they weren't a week ago? And if they weren't a week ago, why not? And what changes dramatically? Like, why weren't, if they were all in on Kalani a week ago, did they need, or were they not? And did they need Penn State to come in and say that, like, we think he's good enough? And then BYU opens their eyes and says, like, oh, yeah, we do think he's good enough, actually. We didn't see it until somebody else placed a bid on the product. Now I realize how much I actually love it. Like, I'm not sure I understand that aspect of this conversation of why everybody is willing to continue to increase the price over and over and over if you weren't willing to do it a week ago.
I think that honestly ties into what Kalani was talking about when he said that this is a good thing because he is getting more and more national attention. And yes, that hurts BYU's pocketbooks, but that ultimately is a good thing for the program, for Kalani, and for his staff, right?
To get this type of commitment.
To get this type of commitment and this type of money that, frankly, they deserve. And it's been well known that BYU has not paid their coaches historically, right?
As well
as what they deserve. And now you have a team that's 11-1 and on the verge of the college football playoff, and a lot of people would argue that they should be in. And there are a lot of guesses out there as to what Kalani Sitake makes. Nobody knows for sure.
Yeah.
But if those numbers are true, he is severely underpaid.
Yeah.
And I think that he has every right to be one of, if not the highest paid coach in the Big 12.
He certainly deserves to be in that conversation. And if BYU wants to keep him from Penn State, he's going to have to be. And then my further question, we talked to Mitch about it in the last segment, is what happens next year when somebody comes calling? If BYU continues to win at the level that this expectation sets, which is 10 wins a year, 11 wins a year, he's recruiting kids from all over the country, he's getting big recruits to come to BYU and having success at a school that has, in the last 30 years, not had this level of success, it's not going to stop. And at what cost are these donors, the BYU fan base, willing to get to keep him around? Because if he's going to be the hot commodity every summer, and Penn State has already laid this out, are they going to keep being able to fend people off? Or is this going to be Kalani's last time to play this card and have to say, hey, all the donors came to your backing. They've given you everything you need to compete in the Big 12. BYU's not leaving the Big 12 anytime soon. You don't need an Ohio State-like budget or an Oregon State or an Oregon budget to compete in the Big 12. You just don't. You know, Texas Tech has a lot, but we can give you as much as Texas Tech. Now it's on you to win. Is that enough? Is that expectation enough? And then at some point, does that get tapped out because these other schools continue to come for him? We'll see. Kalani's going to have to keep winning on the field. As long as he wins on the field, that is good for BYU. All right, what's next?
Number 2, you talked about it yesterday. After a rough game on Sunday, the Jazz really bounced back last night against Houston.
Very impressive win for the Jazz, 133-125. After getting blown off the floor on Sunday, they just did not belong on the court with the Rockets. At least didn't look like it. And then last night they showed that they can compete with these types of teams. And I think this was the best win of the season for the Jazz. You know, they beat Phoenix early in the year before Phoenix had kind of figured itself out. They beat Boston on the road. And Boston's fine, but it's not a great team. This win, after what they showed on Sunday, I thought was really impressive. And you got it from your 2 stars. And your 2 stars had basically been entirely taken out of the game on Sunday. Markkanen was fine. He had 18 points Sunday afternoon. But it was pretty quiet. It was pretty unimpactful. And they were down 30 most of the game. Keontae George had his worst game as a pro on Sunday. 0 points, 8 turnovers. I think he had 2 assists in the game. Real carelessness at some points in the game. He had checked out mentally, which he had not done at any point this year, which I thought could have been a point in which he regressed for the rest of the year. And it was going to test kind of this new mental strength that he had developed in the offseason and had talked about, and the maturity that I've talked to people in the Jazz front office that they're raving about what a different person he is. And he showed it yesterday. He came out and he had 28 points and he took on the challenge, and he had another bad first quarter. And I thought, oof, is this going to bleed over? Is this going to be something that derails him? Because you've seen this happen with young players. You've seen this happen with young teams. Things go wrong, and once it goes wrong, they don't know how to stop it. And Keontae immediately put a stop to it. And I thought that's what was most impressive.
It's a very encouraging sign, obviously, because, I mean, you had been saying towards the latter part of the offseason with some of the conversations that you had, this Jazz front office was very excited about Keontae George, and that kind of caught you and, a lot of people on social media by surprise because of what we had seen over the first 2 years. It was like, really? That guy is impressing you with his maturity? Like, nobody ever would have thought that, and we are actually seeing it. And as you mentioned, the old Keontae George would have had that bad game and then just slid. Right?
And it would have kept going.
But he bounced back, and you got to give him a ton of credit for doing that. And it's really cool to see him take that big step in year 3, similar to what we've seen other players do.
And beyond it mattering for Keontae George personally, more importantly, if you're a Jazz fan, it matters for the Jazz. You have to have guys who can react to adversity. And he showed an ability to do it. Lowry continues to play at a higher level than he ever has. And look, Lowry hadn't been playing particularly well over his last 5 games. He'd gone from 30 points a game down to 20. He was shooting, I think, 23% from the three-point line. Like, that hot start had basically entirely disappeared. And my question for Lowry has always been, can you be more than a complimentary shooter? Can you do things on the court that help you win when your shots aren't going in? And over the previous 5, I didn't think he'd done a ton. And then last night, he only took 3-point attempts because his three-point shot hasn't been falling. And what do you have to do when that's the case? You have to get baskets the hard way. And he earned 11 trips to the free throw line. He made 9 of them. He did make 2 of his 3 3-point attempts. He got 8 rebounds. He did the other things that are not as fun and not as easy to do when you're his size to help the Jazz win the game, and he found a way to do it. Now, there are other issues at play here. Houston was on the second night of a back-to-back in Salt Lake City after they steamrolled the Jazz on Sunday, and they came into this game very haphazardly. And I thought Kevin Durant played an absurdly lazy game, despite the fact that he had the 30 points, because he's that good of a player that he can wake up and pour in 30, regardless of the difficulty. He's that good of a player, but he didn't really try that hard to win the game. And I thought that was a flaw. I do think Houston's overall a flawed roster. I think it's going to be exposed in the playoffs. But regardless, that was a good win from the Jazz's top players. And then their young players, Ace Bailey, Walt Clayton, and Kyle Filipowski also played really well. I just continue to be shocked at how good of a player Ace Bailey is from an all-around standpoint. There were flashes at Rutgers as a young player that he was going to be a big-time scorer. We knew he could rebound a little. You didn't see any passing. You saw some really poor defensive effort, especially when he was not on the ball. He really checked out and just kind of stood up and sometimes put his hands on his hips and just kind of looked around and just would get back cut and beat all the time by lesser players. You're just not seeing it. His buy-in to be a great NBA player is there. And as long as he is bought in, and he's shown, I don't think, a single second on the court over his first 19 games in the NBA, that are 20 games in the NBA, that he's not going to be fully bought in. With his talent level, if he continues to be this bought in, I mean, he's going to be the Jazz's best player in the next 24 months, and it's going to be by a lot.
That's coachability, man. That's what that is. That is being willing to listen to the people you need to listen to.
Yeah, understanding what's good for you is good for the team, and what's good for the team is good for you, and that was not obvious at Rutgers all the time. And you recognize it had more to do with the context of the players around him and the situation he had walked into than the person himself. So that's a really good sign. Walt Clayton also had his best game as a pro, the other first-round pick for the Jazz. 8 points, 6 rebounds, or 6 assists, 5 rebounds. Hit a couple of shots. He just looked engaged. He looked the most engaged he had, and in fact got most of the backup minutes at guard in the second half over Isaiah Collier. Isaiah played a little bit, but Walt Clayton still got those minutes, so I thought that was really impressive. From Walt Clayton, Jazz back in action on Thursday against the Brooklyn Nets on the road. That's a chance to get back-to-back wins, and 3 wins out of 4, and then they're in New York on Friday night against Jordan Clarkson and the Knicks. What's next?
Number 3, amidst all the chaos in Provo yesterday, sounds like there was a team meeting up on the hill. Our guy Steve Bartle reported that after the meeting, reports say it's business as usual.
Yeah, there were dueling team meetings set for BYU and Utah yesterday, and there was some thought that is Witt going to announce his retirement and Kalani's going to leave for Penn State, and that's why they were gathering. It does sound like that might have been the intention of the meeting at BYU, and we don't know if that was ever the case for Utah. And in fact, in all honesty, with National Letter of Intent Day coming tomorrow, Witt shouldn't leave before tomorrow. Witt shouldn't announce that it's his last game. And you know what? Witt should coach the bowl game. Well, he should see what happens in the college football playoff over the next week. But he should coach the bowl game and then announce what he wants to do, or announce shortly before the bowl game and allow Morgan Scalley to take over the same way he was allowed to take over going into the Fiesta Bowl and be the head coach there, the co-head coach, before taking over officially the next year. I would imagine that would be the same situation for Kyle Whittingham. I'd be surprised if he announced it dramatically before that. And honestly, he may want to see what happened with Kalani at BYU. I mean, he may just want to keep an eye on that. Not that I think that should radically change what his decision-making is going to be, but you might as well play it out a little bit, gather a little bit more information just to make sure you're making the right decision.
I have seen, we'll need to confirm this or not, but I have seen that Whittingham has a deadline actually, which is December 5th, which is Friday.
Okay.
So we may know, well, we should know by the bowl game on what's going to happen.
Should definitely know by the bowl game. Utah should absolutely be willing to kick that can down the road. If he needs another week to decide, he's earned that. If he needs another 2 weeks to decide, he's earned that. There's no reason to put this on Witt. Witt, if Witt sticks around next year, I should say, Utah's in a great spot. And if he doesn't, I think Utah's in a just fine spot. I think Morgan Scalley's more than prepared to be the head coach of this team and move on here. And I don't totally get the impression, and certainly there's always movement, but I don't totally get the impression that Utah's staff is going to get picked clean the longer they wait here in these first couple of weeks of the season. It is Tuesday. That means it's a Jazz Ticket Tuesday. Hit it, Christian.
It's Jazz Ticket Tuesday, and your chance to win tickets is right now.
Call this number now.
Call this number now.
Be caller number 12 at 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-ZONE. And you'll be on your way to Delta Center to see the Utah Jazz.
He fires the three. He hits. Oh, don't do me like that.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jazz Ticket Tuesday, caller 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. That's 801-575-ZONE. Wins a pair of tickets to see the Jazz against the Oklahoma City Thunder coming up this Sunday, December 7th at Delta Center. 801-575-ZONE will be the 12th caller through. All right, we'll be back with more next coming up, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Let's go!
Complete game coverage of the Cougars is right here on the KSL Sports Zone. It's a Big 12 title game showdown for Kalani Sitake and the Cougars as they square off against Texas Tech for a spot in the college football playoff. Exclusive Big 12 title game coverage on the Zone is presented by JCW's, the Burger Boys, quality and a lot of it. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow is Wednesday, meaning tomorrow is Win Ticket Wednesday. And good news, Jake will be back tomorrow. Win big this Wednesday on the KSL Sports Zone with Win Tickets Wednesday. This week, it's win them before you can buy them tickets to Aerofest 2026, featuring Styx and Chicago at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater coming up August 30th, right around the corner. Tickets on sale this Friday at 10 a.m. at livenation.com. Listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day on Wednesday for your chance to win, but very cool. Go see Styx and Chicago and have your August plans already made for you. I am a little surprised, and look, I want to back this up, or before I say this, I just want to lay out that I'm a huge Kalani Sitake fan. I love the way he coaches. I actually think I buy him more as a coach than I do as the perfect fit for BYU. I think Kalani would win anywhere. I think Kalani could win at Wisconsin. I think Kalani could win at Oregon State. I think Kalani could win at an SEC school. I think Kalani could win at the Big Ten. So I think in that sense, I'm not trying to undercut anything about Kalani. I am surprised that the feeling has come out that it's Kalani is not just the best guy for this job, he's the only guy for this job. That Kalani at all costs is going to be the case. Because if you were to tell me that 3 years from now Jay Hill was in a similar spot and had the same resources as Kalani, that BYU would be back to competing for Big 12 title games, I wouldn't be surprised in the least. We saw Jay Hill out-kicking his coverage consistently at Weber State. It's a hard place to win at Weber State. It's a cool job. We care about college football a lot in our state, but compared to some of the other schools in that conference, Montana State, winning Weber State's really difficult. And Jay Hill was able to do it. And I have no doubt he'd be able to win at BYU if he ended up as their head coach. And that could still be the case. So I am surprised at I want to say the desperation, but the commitment to Kalani being basically all out or bust in this situation. And that's not to undercut how good of a coach I think Kalani is. I think he's a great coach. I think Kalani will win a lot in his time wherever he is. I wonder if why they feel the resources that they put in there wouldn't bear similar results with a guy like Jay Hill versus Kalani.
You know what's so interesting about that? Who's pounding the table to bring Kalani back? Who's coming up with all the funds? It's the Crumble guy. It's the big money boosters.
Yeah.
It's the fans with the money. And that's what you're going to see, these people with a lot of dough to spend that fall in love with the coaches or with the players. It's because they're fans and they are connected to these people.
It's a really good point, and it's a real flaw. And I don't look. The fans aren't. I'm not saying the fans are stupid or wrong. I'm not saying that at all.
But
and
they
Kalani's
are emotionally
great.
attached to these people more so than the athletic department may be.
You're absolutely right, because it's a business at the end of the day for these athletic departments, and they have to balance the budget and the resources and the time and the commitment and what they can actually offer these schools. The fans are always going to want more, because a collection of 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 fans has more time and resources than the people making the decision in the athletic department for BYU. So you're right. They get this push, this groundswell of support for Kalani, that it's Kalani or bust. And I disagree. I just don't think BYU has to view themselves as Kalani or bust, the same way they didn't have to view themselves as Mark Pope or bust. They moved on from Mark Pope. They got Kevin Young. They're still really good. If Kevin Young were to move on, let's say he gets an NBA job, which could certainly happen, you go and get the next guy, you give him similar resources, and you hope he can come in and win. And that doesn't mean that coaches aren't stars and that coaches don't make a difference. They clearly do. But I do wonder if we're underrating BYU as a program to inflate this idea that it has to be Kalani at all costs, because I don't agree with that. And again, Kalani's going to win. Kalani would win at Penn State. Kalani would win at Washington. Kalani would win at Oregon. Kalani would win at USC. Kalani would win at Utah, wherever you want to put him. And those are West Coast schools. I mean East Coast schools as well. Kalani will win because Kalani is a winner. But I think BYU is a really good program and would win as well. All right, Cole Bagley is going to join us next. The Utah Mammoth are in an absolute free fall. What is going on, and do they actually have the ability to change it? We'll talk to him about it. Stick around. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The sports you love, the teams you can't live without.
Get a sense of urgency!
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Hey, join Hans and Scotty from noon to 3 at Tim Daly Nissan coming up this Wednesday. 11155 South, Jordan Gateway in South Jordan. 11155 South, Jordan Gateway in South Jordan. Tim Daly, home of the Forever Warranty. The Mammoth are in a bit of a free fall. They've not been able to right the ship, despite the fact that it seems to sink to new lows with every outing. Let's welcome in our Utah Mammoth insider, Cole Bagley. Read him at KSLSports.com. What's going on, Cole?
Oh, not much, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing well. This is one of the stranger collapses I've seen. And I haven't followed hockey my whole life, so maybe this is more common than not, but they win 7 in a row early in the year. They're sitting at 8-2-0. They have beat some of the best teams in the league on the road. The young players were dominant. And then they lose to Edmonton, and since then it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're 3?
They're 4-13 over the last 17 games.
I mean, it's. I hate to sound aggressive, but this is a disaster.
Yeah, it's brutal. Now, I do think the NHL is somewhat unique in that a lot of teams, will experience, fairly significant ups and downs through the course of the season. Every game matters. Every game counts. Guys are generally playing their hardest through all 3 periods of hockey through the majority of a season. And so you're going to get ups and downs. You're going to get cold streaks. You're going to get hot streaks. But this is pretty severe, I would say. I've watched the NHL for almost my whole life, and I've seen, my fair share of similar situations. But this one's pretty significant, to begin the season the way that you had described, and to win 7 in a row, and then to only win 4 games over the last 13, to be outscored, I believe, 59-43 over that period of time, and to be bottom 6 in a collection of different statistical areas, such as save percentage. They have the worst power play in the entire league. It's not a good situation right now. And I think that's kind of to put it lightly.
So I'm curious in this type of spot, I cover the Jazz, and their down years the last 3 seasons have been by design. Last year was the worst season in franchise history. That was on purpose. They were trying to get a draft pick. They knew this is what they were doing. All the players knew what they were doing. All the fans knew what they were doing. It was somewhat it was a plane crash, but the crash was in control. It was a designed plane crash. This is not the design. The players came into this season talking about the Utah Mammoth making the playoffs, and if they continue to play like this, they're going to be lottery bound. They're going to miss the playoffs. So how do you fix something like this traditionally? What type of changes can you make to halt this type of losing streak?
Yeah, it's a good question. These are stretches where team meetings need to happen, and I think the front office really needs to look at the mirror and see what kind of things they can do. This is like you were talking about. This was not the design. From the end of season remarks from the players last year until now, it's been all about not necessarily promising the playoffs, but saying that this season is playoffs or bust. That phrase has been used countless times from players to the front office to coaches, everybody. That's the expectation, is that in year 5 of the rebuild, and based on how well and how much growth some of the young players showed last season, some of the guys coming into their prime, such as Keller and Sergachev, and then the additions they made in the offseason. On paper, I think it was obvious this team should be playoff bound, but they're not living up to expectations. And so I do think the front office is reaching a point where you got to look and see what else is available out there. There are quite a few teams right now who are on the cusp of having some fire sales, teams like Nashville and Calgary and, St. Louis. And I think it would be wise for the team to look at that situation and go, is there anybody that we can, potentially get at a lower price that could help benefit our team? I do think there's some talented veteran forwards in that mix, and I also think the goaltending situation needs to be addressed. As I mentioned previously, they have the 6th worst save percentage in the National Hockey League. Both of their goaltenders are putting up subpar backup numbers, and so there's some key areas that need to be adjusted, and I don't think that there's necessarily any solutions internally. I think that at this point they really got to start looking, outside of the organization to see if they can make any adjustments that will be, proper solutions.
Vejmelka was so fabulous last year. He gets pulled in the first period yesterday after giving up 3 pretty quick goals. Does the financial commitment they made to him over the offseason make it difficult, or is that not a long-term problem? Can they afford to move on from him or bring somebody else in if they felt like they needed to?
That's a good question. I do think it makes things tougher than it needs to be, but I don't think it puts anything really out of possibility. They still have a decent number of dollars in terms of their cap space. I think they were wise to only sign Vitek Vanacek to just a 1-year contract, kind of a prove-it deal for Vanacek. And unfortunately for him in the Mammoth, he's really not lived up to that. And so, this team has the assets. I think they have the cap space to go ahead and bring, if they felt it necessary and they found a situation where they could potentially trade for somebody or find somebody else, they would be in a position to do so. But, it does make it tough, right? Like, they went all in on Vejmelka. And he had a great year. I think his save percentage last season was like .907. I want to say he was top 15 in the league. Maybe closer to about 20, but in a league where there's 32 teams and there's 2 goaltenders and even 3 in some situations, to be in the top third is very, very good. But it's just been a tough year. The defense has played good in certain areas. It's kind of ironic. I think they've allowed the fewest shots on goal this season, but obviously that's not aligning with how many goals they have allowed in terms of save percentage. So it's not necessarily a situation where they couldn't get somebody, but it does make things a little more difficult than they need to be.
Have the young players progressed the way you think they expected? Are they carrying a big enough load this early? Logan Cooley gets his big contract. Gunther got signed last year. Is the expectation that they need to be living up to those deals now, or those investments in the future?
I think they need to be living more so up to the deals now. Logan Cooley, beginning next season, will be the highest paid player on the Mammoth roster. He just signed a $10 million AAV contract. That's a big boy contract. That's a contract where I think you can look at a player and go, we just paid you a lot of money, some of the most money that we've given out in recent years, especially to a guy who's just coming into his, second NHL contract. I think they have played, kind of below expectations. I know that, Cooley had his phenomenal night last week where he had 4 goals and, he had a hat trick earlier in the year. And, he's doing decent points wise, but it's just a lack of consistency that I think has been the biggest issue, for him and for Dylan Guenther. And honestly, you could probably look at the whole team, and make that claim. So, they haven't been bad per se, but, based on what we saw in the projections that they were expected to hit this year, I would say that they're certainly underperforming. And it just comes down to, you cannot have these incredibly hot nights where you're putting up 4 goals or 3 goals or 5 points and then go cold for 2-3 games with a point or two. And that's the struggle. That is the biggest, thing that I've been told from players across the league is that consistency for young players is the greatest challenge. And rightfully so. It's the best league in the world for a reason. And, when you do look at it, Guenther is only 22 and Cooley's only 21, but, they just signed big contracts. And so, expectations go through the roof. And right now they're just not playing up to those expectations.
Andre Tyranny's been the coach for 5 seasons now. Obviously, they've only been in Utah for 2 years, so it maybe feels like he's newer on the job to us locally than it has for fans who have been following this team now for 5 seasons. He's obviously never finished above 500 with the team. In fact, their 12-12-3 start is the best record he has had other than what they did last year in his first season. Do you think there's an expiration date on him as far as the status quo goes if they feel like, hey, they're not living up to expectations?
I think any team in the NHL would have to look at it that way, and that's just the nature of the game, right? To be in year 5 of a rebuild, to have promised, not promised, but to have talked so heavily about making the playoffs, about certain players making the jump, to have so much confidence. And again, like I said earlier, to experience extreme highs and lows. Any NHL front office is going to begin questioning that and considering that. And, that's just the way that it is. And obviously, in your tenure, I'm sure that you've seen those similar situations. It's a hard business. But that's just the nature of the game. And so, I wouldn't be shocked if those types of conversations and thoughts are beginning to happen because, year 5 of last season was all about playing meaningful hockey. And I think that those were appropriate expectations. This was Logan Cooley was in his 2nd season. Dylan Guenther was in his first full season in the National Hockey League. And, with the relocation and the adjustments and all those types of things, that was fine. But this year 5, you've hit on draft picks, you've acquired talent, you've made the big trades, you've signed a bunch of big contracts. You have to perform. And when you don't perform, questions start being asked.
Does the schedule get any easier? Is this going to flatten out? Are any favors going to be done for the Mammoth, or are they going to have to dig themselves out of this hole?
They have to get to January, at least at 500 or better, or things are going to go south really quickly. And the schedule does lighten up. They're at home a lot more. They're not facing as tough as opponents. The back-to-backs kind of start to slow down as much. Yes, the schedule does you some favors, but at the end of the day, it's still, the National Hockey League, and everybody's going through this. I think that's the biggest thing is with a condensed schedule, everybody is playing pretty much the same number of games in a short amount of time. Everybody's got, back-to-backs every other week, and they're traveling, they're going all over the place. So sure, it gets a little bit easier in terms of you're going to play more home games. But, they haven't really proven that home ice is necessarily, a stronghold for them, a fortress. And so, they're going to have to find a way, and it's tough.
Last thing quickly, we've talked a lot about the condensed schedule. We've heard a lot about it. They talk about it on the broadcast a lot. What does it actually mean for the team? How long is this Olympic break? How does it help them or hurt them?
Yeah, so, with 3 weeks off, they've had to fit a bunch more games ahead of those Olympics to make sure that they get 82 games in between October and April. To be honest, right now I think they're one of the victims of the schedule. it's not helping them. When you lose in the way that they have over these last couple of games, when you lose 13 of 14, but you've got to, turn around and play a game the next night, or, you only have a day off in between, that's tough. They have not had 2 days off in about 3 weeks, and that doesn't change until January. In terms of the break, yeah, it could be a positive thing. Historically, there's been plenty of teams who have taken, whether it's the All-Star break or the Olympic break, they've taken it seriously. They've gotten their rest. They've made adjustments they've made trades, they've made acquisitions. That can be a turning point. But it can't be a turning point if you're, just taking on a significant amount of water. So right now is the time that this team needs to figure things out. They need to start getting back in the win column. They need to, put a Band-Aid over things. They need to stop the bleeding. Because if we get later into this month and, they're 6-7 points back from a playoff spot, it pains me to say it, but you kind of just have to wave a white flag. And that's just the way that things are headed unless something drastic changes.
You can listen to him more on the Utah Hockey Podcast. Read him at KSLSports.com and find him on social media. For the best Mammoth coverage, Bagley, KSL Sports. Cole, keep trudging along. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben.
There he is. Cole Bagley giving us the latest on a Mammoth team that is not playing up to expectations right now. We'll see if they're able to right that ship anytime soon. It is Tuesday. It's time to give away more Jazz tickets. Christian, hit it.
It's Jazz Ticket Tuesday, and your chance to win tickets is right now.
Call this number now.
Call this number now.
Be caller number 12 at 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-ZONE. And you'll be on your way to Delta Center to see the Utah Jazz.
He fires the three. He hits. Oh, don't do me like that.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
12th caller right now, 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-ZONE wins a pair of tickets to see the Jazz and the Thunder on Sunday, December 7th at Delta Center. That's this Sunday. Cool family affair. Go check out the Thunder coming up at Delta Center on Sunday, 801-575-ZONE. When we come back, I'm so sad Jake's not here. We're doing the Big 12 Power Poll. It's not the last of the season. We're not going to let Jake get off that easily. But Christian and I will have it all for you as the regular season has wrapped. Stick around. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who is climbing? Who is falling? And who just flat out stinks?
Some of y'all football sucks.
This is the Big 12 Power Poll with Jake and Ben on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Utah's Holiday Magic starts. Ballpark at America First Square. Experience holiday lights at the ballpark at America First Square. Dazzling displays, music, and family fun. Now through January 3rd. You can get tickets online at the ballpark at afs.com. That's the ballpark at afs.com. Christian, I think we're going tomorrow. I don't know if you're going, but I'm going. So
Company party.
Company party. So excited to be celebrating the holidays at the ballpark at afs.com. All right, Christian, it is time for the Big 12 Power Poll. As Jake likes to say, we have an imaginary poll about 35 teams that span the Big 12 and the rest of the country, and we rank them. This is going to be more accurate without Jake here. Jake's always throwing curveballs in out of personal biases, anger, hatred, spite.
Well, and we're smarter than him.
And we're smarter than Jake, so we were going to go. Though, this got more of a shakeup than you would expect this late in the season.
Well, and one thing I noticed, too, obviously it's who made the bowl game and who didn't, right? But there's a very, very clear bottom five, and it's been that way, I think, the most of the season.
You know what's surprising? Outside of a couple of teams here, pretty good records across the board. And I don't know if that's a testament to the Big 12 or a real detractor that a lot of these mediocre teams are beating up on each other, because I think there's probably a lot of mediocre teams in the Big 12. But we know where we're starting. What is it, number 16?
It's still Oklahoma State, but Ben, they have some good news this week.
What? They don't have to lose this weekend?
No game this weekend, so they can't lose.
They can't lose another Big 12 game. They have yet to win a game in the Big 12 in the 16-team era. Utah beat them in Week 4 last year, and they have not won a Big 12 game since they finished the season at 1-11.
But they've got their new guy.
They do. Eric Morris is coming in to be their head coach. We'll see what they do. They've got National Letter of Intent Day tomorrow. Is he able to get some recruits, some transfers to come in? And the nice thing is about college football today, you don't have to suffer these problems long if you get a good class in the transfer portal. If you can put up the money, you can turn things around very quickly. You can get back to bowl eligibility, if not better. And we'll see what Oklahoma State's able to do. But 1-11, we've talked about, Utah's down year last year, and Witt has talked about how painful that was. They were 5-7. They were a couple of games with late drives, whether it was BYU or others, where had they laced it together, they could have won those games and coasted into a bowl game, and it would have been a down year, but certainly not a disaster. We treated Utah like it was a disaster last year at 5-7. Oklahoma State, who was thought of as a true peer for the Utes in the Big 12, went 1-11 this season and has yet to win a Big 12 game. It's shocking.
UT Martin, their only win.
It's a good win. What's next?
Number 15, Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes.
They are who we thought they were. Yes, they had a nice year last year. Got to play BYU in the bowl game and competed for a Big 12 title game. But when you have the Heisman Trophy winner and you have the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns on your roster, you should feel confident. Now, maybe we have to look, did they underachieve last year when you have that much talent? I don't know, but they bounced back with a 3-9 season. They lost to Kansas State 24-14 over the weekend. This is a horrible season for Colorado.
How many QBs did they start this year? Was it 3 or 4?
It was at least 3, and then they ended up redshirting their better young player, Salter, the last game of the season. If they'd played him, he would have lost that redshirt eligibility. And it is smart. I actually do like this about Deion. Deion's job is totally safe because what else is Colorado going to do? This is smart because in the high likelihood, and we'll see, maybe he gets there, but that Salter is not an NFL quarterback just because so few kids actually are NFL quarterbacks. This gives him an extra year of college eligibility to get paid. This is very likely the 4 and now 5-year stretch in his life that he will be able to make the most money he has. He will get, if he's a starter, $1 million the last couple of years of his career as an upperclassman if he's good enough to start wherever he is in college football. So by giving him an extra season, by skipping a game 12, in what was going to be a loss to Kansas State regardless, Deion might have put some money in his pocket. I actually think that's honorable, unless I'm missing something more underhanded on the back end, but I don't think it is. Good for Deion, though 3-9 is trash for a Colorado team. The season is now over.
Next, number 14, Central Florida.
Again, is this the worst 5-7 team of all time? They started out 14-0 against BYU. Nobody with a pulse thought they actually had a chance to win that game, even when they were up after the first quarter, or just down by 3, 17-14 at halftime. You knew Central Florida was going to fall apart. It's not a bad first campaign, campaign for Scott Frost, but it's certainly not a team that feels like they're going to have to be taken seriously next year or the year after.
No, and it is hard taking over a program, even with how fast you can flip things, right? But with a program that had kind of been a disaster in UCF over recent years, it's hard to flip that instantly. Similar to what our guy Fritz is doing in Houston, right? It took him a season or two to really build some credit.
Should Central Florida consistently be a bottom 3 or 4 program in the Big 12, or should they be able to flirt with the Baylors and the Texas Techs? I know Texas Tech. Let's take Texas Tech. They're in a different conversation now. Baylor and TCU, because the advantage that those schools have, and we'll talk about them, is they are in football powerhouse states. Football matters. And even if you don't get the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th best player, even at their position in the state, if these kids want to stay close to home, they can play at your school and still be really high-level prospects compared to the kids that are in Kansas, compared to some of the kids that are in some of these smaller schools or smaller football states. I think you should be middle of the pack in the Big 12. And you know what? 5-7, maybe you're close.
I agree, 100%.
But you should go to a bowl game every year. I think they should have that type of talent and some investment. Not too long ago, Central Florida was kind of a cool school. Hasn't been lately. What's next?
Number 13. The best 4-8 team in the country.
Very possible.
West Virginia.
Got smoked by Texas Tech. This was a real statement game, I thought, from Texas Tech, which as much as you can make a statement game against a 4-8 team or a 4-7 team going into this game, I thought West Virginia had been playing much better lately. They had beat Houston. They had flirted with beating some other teams. I thought they gave BYU a better push than maybe it looked by the final score. Texas Tech wants to make sure that nobody thinks that anybody else is the class of this conference right now. 49-0 on the road. Absolutely stomped them. I thought that was extraordinarily impressive from Texas Tech, even if it's against a bad West Virginia team that wasn't even playing for bowl eligibility. But a decent first year for Rich Rod and the Mountaineers. We'll see if they can build on that next year. It's not a guarantee, as we've seen. Just because you win more games than you did a previous season doesn't guarantee success in year 3.
I like Rich Rod. I liked what this West Virginia team was able to do in the second half of the season. You hope that you can continue that momentum, but at the same time, coming off a season like this, I wouldn't be surprised if even some of their best players want to transfer and get out of there.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's always going to make it hard to continue building on a subpar season.
Yeah, why would you go back to a 4-8 team if a 10-2 team wants you and can offer the same money? Yeah, you don't have to build it. You can just join something better. It's the Kevin Durant approach. And you know what? If kids can get the money and they feel like they can win and compete at a higher level, I think that's going to be a real draw for a lot of these players. Number 12.
Kansas
Certainly gave Utah everything they wanted to handle. And I was impressed. I thought Kansas came out there and battled hard. And we've not always seen that type of energy from this Kansas team. The end of the Jalen Daniels era finally has come at Kansas. And he was a fun player. He was a good player. Always higher expectations than results, I think. But when he had it going, he was a pretty good player. He did not look particularly good against Utah.
Well, the rest of the team did, and they gave Utah a heck of a scare. But Jalen Daniels threw 3 interceptions in the red zone.
Yeah.
One of them in the end zone to Jackson
in the end zone.
Benny. One of them on like the 3-yard line that Davis returned for a pick 6, and then the first one, Smith Snowden picked off at like the 15-yard line. But all 3 of those drives should have ended in points for Kansas, and those were definitely what broke the game.
If those turn into field goals and not a pick 6, you've got a 16-point swing in a game that Utah wins by 10. So, yeah, they're going to absolutely feel like they left some meat on the bone there. But this is who Kansas is. They're 5-7. They shouldn't be a bowl team most years. Historically, they have not been. And but they gave Utah a tough push. But Utah emerges victorious 31-21. Who's next?
Number 11, Baylor.
Okay, it's hard to say anybody but Oklahoma State because they went 1-11. But Baylor 5-7 has to be one of the most disappointing seasons in the Big 12 this year. Am I wrong? They brought Dave Aranda back. They thought they were headed in the right direction.
Disappointing to who? To Baylor?
It should be to Baylor. Baylor thought they were going to be competing this year for the Big 12 title, and I know we've talked
Who's that guy they just fired?
Oh, their athletic director?
He's probably the only person that thought that they were going to be something other than this. I think everybody else expected exactly this when you bring back Aranda, right?
Again, 48 months ago, 2 years ago, that's 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 24 months ago, excuse me, don't do math on the air. 24 months ago, Dave Aranda was on the hot seat. They bring him back. They say, let's see what happens. We don't know if there's a better option for us out there. And he has a much better year in 2024. And they say, great, we're moving in the right direction. Again, this is what I'm talking about with Rich Rodriguez. Just because you have a bad year 1, and this isn't Dave Aranda's first year, but I mean, that's where we're starting the sample size. Year 1 is bad. Year 2 looks better. Doesn't guarantee success in year 3. And that's what Dave Aranda ran into. They did not have a good third year in this hot seat bounce back from Dave Aranda, and they have guaranteed his job. And it's one of the things that colleges are doing now. They're doing this weird process where they're either firing their coach or they're just investing more in NIL. And I suspect Baylor's going to get a bigger push to try and draw in more resources for Dave Aranda to win. I just don't know if he's the guy. He seems like a nice guy. I know a lot of people here seem to really like him because of his previous ties to the state. But 5-7's bad, again, at a Baylor team that should be able to win 6 games, should have an offense and the types of players that can get you to 6 wins in what I think is a pretty average to mediocre Big 12 conference, especially in that middle chunk. You can't feast on enough of those teams around you to get to 6 wins, and in your non-conference schedule, it's a black eye for Baylor, and I don't know if they're going to be able to bounce back.
They're a good program. They should be good.
Should be better than this. No question about it. Number 10.
Number 10, Kansas State.
6-6. They did beat Colorado 24-14. They might have had the most disappointing season because of what their expectations truly were going into that Iowa State game in Ireland to open the season. This is a chance to build on something, certainly be in the running for the conference title at the end of the year. And they weren't close, and they weren't close at any point. You know, they fell apart early in the year. Dad's beating up brother for Avery Johnson. And they righted the ship a little bit. It started to feel like things were trending in the right direction. And they get smoked by Utah, or at least beaten by Utah. Was it BYU? No, it was Utah. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm mixing up my... it was only a 3-point game. So they ended up losing that game late. You're right. I apologize. but they kind of feel like they're moving in that direction, and Utah bounces back and beats them. I don't know. They never quite got off the mat. You get to 6 wins. I guess that's a positive for Kansas State, but considering I think they probably went into the year expecting 10 wins, this is a hard season. We'll see what decisions they make in the offseason.
And if you don't change anything, why would you expect things to change just because? Right? Like, you would got to change something. So we'll see.
You're right. 51-47 is that Utah-Kansas State game. Feels like an eternity ago now with all that's happened since then. But, yeah, not a great year from Kansas State. 6-6. They're our first bowl-eligible team here. Certainly not good enough. What's next?
Number 9, Cincinnati.
7-5. They really fell apart late in the season. This was a team that Jake was riding high on. Jake continued to rank number 1 in our rankings over and over. What was their schedule down the stretch? Because weren't they
I think Utah really broke them. Going into that Utah game, they were positioned in a spot to potentially have a shot at the college football playoff.
They controlled their own destiny. We talked about that a lot.
Utah really, really broke them. Sorsby had one of the worst games of his career that day.
They were 7-1, having won 7 games in a row. And I think the problem was when we picked it apart, they beat Bowling Green, Northwestern State, Kansas, Iowa State, Central Florida, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. So basically nobody other than Iowa State. They lost 4 straight to close the season. They lost to Utah, Arizona, Baylor, TCU. That was absolutely a paper tiger, and the schedule did all the favors for them. They didn't play Texas Tech this year. They didn't even play Kansas State. I think if they played those 2 teams, they would have lost there as well. This is much closer to being, they finished 7-5, but this is much closer to being a 5-7 or 6-6 team than doing anything meaningful in the Big 12.
Number 8, Arizona State.
Got crushed in their rivalry game against Arizona, 23-7. Not super impressive. This is more like the team that Utah saw, where Utah did steamroll them here in Salt Lake City in the rain. Decent year, 8-4. I think if 2 years ago, before they had set this much higher expectation, last season by winning the Big 12 and almost beating Texas in the playoff, you would have taken 8-4 under Kenny Dillingham this season. But after setting the expectations so high a season ago, maybe this feels like a little bit of a letdown, but they're in a good spot. They've got a good coach. They certainly seem to have some talent. We'll see what they do at quarterback.
It is hard when your starting quarterback goes down midway through the season, but I cannot wrap my head around the fact that these guys beat Texas Tech. Does not make sense.
Well, Texas Tech at least had their backup quarterback, though that backup quarterback did beat Utah in the fourth quarter pretty convincingly. Next.
Number 7, Iowa State.
Iowa State finishing 8-4 is like a Matt Campbell team scoring 27 points and turning off the engines. It's exactly what they do seemingly every season. I know that wasn't the case last year, but this is what Iowa State is. It's a very good program. It's not a great program. They did beat Oklahoma State 20-13 to close the season. Also not an impressive win. Though Oklahoma State had 2 close games late in the season, so I guess maybe tip the cap to them that they didn't fully give up. But a fine year from Iowa State. Probably a little bit of a letdown for the fans there. Matt Campbell's going to come back. They're going to be the exact same team next year.
Exact same team.
Yep. So they always are. He's very consistent. Consistently good, not great.
Number 6, Houston.
Maybe the biggest surprise of the season. When you look at what they did last year, coming in 9-3, third most wins, tied for the 4th most wins at 9. It's a good year. They, again, kind of crumbled down the stretch. They did beat Baylor in the final week of the season, 31-24. We'll see what their bowl projections look like. Some talk about the Pop-Tart Bowl for Houston. But the fact that they're going to a bowl game in general, I think we had said in the offseason, if they were to get to 6 wins, it would have been a success. Getting to 9 was an overwhelming success. So shout out to that team.
Similar to Cincinnati, I don't think they had a ton of tough games.
No, they had the best schedule in the Big 12 as
Right.
far as ease goes. They did not have to face the toughest teams at all. And they still only managed 9-3. I think that might be a season they look back on and say, oh, we probably could have done a little bit more.
This feels like it was their chance if they wanted to sneak into some sort of title contention just because it was such a mess towards the end of the year. But I don't know. We like Fritz on this show.
Don't lose to West Virginia. That's your problem. You lose to West Virginia, you don't belong, and that certainly proved to be the case.
Number 5, TCU.
They did beat Cincinnati 45-23 their final week of the season. 8-4, good year, not a great year. I wish I could say more. This is, again, it's a little bit like Iowa State. I think this is where they should be. Again, this is where I think Central Florida should probably be a little bit closer to TCU than where they finished the year. 8-4 should be in TCU's wheelhouse 2 out of every 4 seasons, and maybe 1 year they're below that, and 1 year out of those 4 they're much better than that. Maybe 1 year they get to 10, 1 year they finish at 6. But this is probably about what their average should be every season, 8-4. Good year, not a great year.
Number 4, Arizona.
Arizona, 9-3, great year. a huge surprise. This is one of the better surprises in the college football season anywhere for any conference. 9-3, crushed Arizona State late, 23-7 there. Projected to go to the LA Bowl. This is not bad at all for Arizona, and a good sign that moving forward they might actually have the right coach in place.
You're going to finish the season ranked?
Yeah, have a chance to get to 10 wins with a bowl victory. That's a very good year, considering what a disaster they felt like last season after Jedd Fisch left.
Number 3, Utah.
This is, it's funny in how many ways Utah and BYU seem to have flipped spots, which is BYU used to consistently have really good years under Bronco Mendenhall, but they were overshadowed by Utah just having a better season. So you kind of poo-pooed a 10-win year. Utah's got 10 wins. They had a really great season. They're going to finish top 15 ranked in the country. It's just not as good as their rival, and I think for that reason, maybe fans feel like it was a bit of a letdown. But after a 5-7 season last year, completely overhauling the offense, having one of the best offenses in the country, defense weirdly troublesome late in the season, but still found a way to win games on the other side of the field. You've got to do that. That's how you become a great program. I still think Utah's a great program. 10-2, a very good year, just not one of the best years they've ever had.
Going into the Kansas State game, they were second in the Big 12 in rushing yards allowed.
Yeah.
And then Kansas State and Kansas, their final 2 games, they gave up 750 rushing yards.
You almost wonder if they just kind of saw the writing on the wall that they weren't going to the college football playoff and they unplugged the system. I don't know. I don't know why that happened. I don't know if they were exposed. Kansas State saw something and Kansas was able to run with a similar game plan. They'll have to fix it for the bowl game. Not that bowl games really matter that much anymore.
Well, and it was just a bunch of weird stuff that you don't typically see from a Morgan Scalley defense, like guys out of position and the defensive line getting pushed back.
Bad tackling was a problem all year, though. We saw bad tackling from Utah all season. I think that did haunt them a little bit late, but you're right. It was the defensive line losing battles, which we've not seen a lot of.
So, yeah, we'll see. Big decision not only from Whittingham coming in the next month, but remember, it's a single transfer portal window in about mid-January. So they'll need to decide by then whether they're going to go bird watching or keep Devin Dampier around.
Sure, they would love to keep both. And if I were Utah, I would enter the offseason with my main priority outside of the coaching situation is trying to keep both of those quarterbacks because they were so much more dangerous when both of those guys were clicking as opposed to just having one or the other. Utes more than likely going to the Las Vegas Bowl.
Number 2, BYU.
BYU 11-1. This is everything they've played for. I know the week of the championship game has been a little bit derailed by rumors of Kalani Sitake to Penn State, but this is what BYU wanted. Nobody expected it after losing Jake Retzlaff in the offseason. Bear Bachmeier stepped in and exceeded expectations, even the wildest expectations. He's been one of the most solid quarterbacks in all of college football, not just for freshmen, but in general. So a great year for BYU. We'll see if they're able to cap it off with a victory this weekend and punch their ticket to the college football playoff. Otherwise, I do think, unfortunately, we're going to look at this as a good year, not a great year, and I think it's actually been closer to a great year than anything else.
I am very interested to see how BYU performs on Saturday morning because their first game against Texas Tech, crap hit the wall fast with the shank punt, the muff punt, and just a ton of mistakes where it felt like BYU dug themselves a hole early. So if they can keep their head on straight and start right, maybe it's a better game.
I know this game is still in Texas, which you would think would favor Texas Tech, but we know BYU fans are going to travel for this. They are going to want to show out in a way that they could not when they were playing truly a road game at Texas Tech. So this will be a more even crowd than what they faced in the first game. Is that enough to give them the edge? We'll see. I think Texas Tech is really good. Thus,
still number 1.
Still number 1, 11-1. Their lone loss this season was to Arizona State. They backed it up. Everything that their fans said, that their donors said before the season, has come to fruition. Joey McGuire's lived up to expectations, and the scary thing is I think they're getting better. This is a team that feels like it's improving. This is what great teams do in season. They find their weaknesses, they get exposed at moments, and then they ratify them, and they fix them, and they remedy them, and they move forward. And I think that is something that you're going to see with this Texas Tech team. I'm not super confident in BYU's hopes this weekend, though I do think the ability to get a big crowd traveling. I just think Texas Tech is legitimately one of the 5 best teams in college football. But it was funny. Even yesterday, we had Pete Futek on midway through the show, and he's like, yeah, but who have they beat? Like, who? I don't know, man. This is a really good Texas Tech team. Quarterback, maybe not elite, but they're really good. Their receivers are really good, and their defense is insane.
Imagine going back like 2 years ago or even a year ago and saying, oh, yeah, the Texas Tech team in 2025 is going to have a crazy elite defense.
They're going to win every game defensively.
Like what?
Yeah. It's not their style of play. But look, you can change things quickly. And when you get the big money and you're willing to go after transfers, you can flip the script. And BYU has done it and Texas Tech has done it. It's no surprise that those are the two biggest NIL bases in the Big 12 and that they're sitting at the very top.
And you know what? Texas Tech specifically can thank the Jake and Ben show, because in case you don't know, Joey McGuire played our show to hype them up before a game.
It was the first Big 12 game this year.
Yeah.
So it was, at least for both of these teams. Yeah, they hoped that Joey McGuire would be playing it in the locker room. I hope they did. And set up a great rivalry game a big championship game coming up on Saturday, 10 a.m. That's it for your regular season Big 12 Power Poll Top 10 recap, Christian.
Number 10, Kansas State. Number 9, Cincinnati. Number 8, Arizona State. Number 7, Iowa State. Number 6, Houston. Number 5, TCU. Number 4, Arizona. Number 3, Utah. Number 2, BYU. And number 1, Texas Tech.
I tell you what, locally, we would certainly love to have BYU and Utah in the top 3 every year. Certainly you'd like to see one of them emerge on top. But this is a good year locally for our state for college football. And BYU has a chance to make it even more special coming up this weekend. We'll wrap up the show coming up next, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two amigos on the airwaves, talking sports. They got it made, Jake's and also loves his tie-dye. Ben's got style with his scarf. Oh my.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This segment's brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach Doors and Windows, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Christian, I've been searching. I don't see any resolution yet on Kalani Sitake.
No, and with tomorrow National Signing Day and then obviously the big game on Saturday, you want this wrapped up pretty quickly.
Did this get done today?
I don't think so.
I don't know. The winds are blowing quickly, and yesterday it felt like it was all in favor of Penn State, and this morning it feels like it's gone back to BYU. And if you're just crossing some T's and dotting some I's, I'd say, yeah, get it done, because there are kids signing and wanting to sign waiting in the wings for you.
And that's what throws me off, is because yesterday, by the time I left the studio, I mean, word around the office, just a little peek inside was like, oh, he's probably gone.
Yeah, the meeting has been called.
And then
announce he was leaving.
Yeah, just a couple hours later. I mean, admittedly, it was a kind of last-ditch Hail Mary effort by boosters, by allegedly meeting with the widow of Lavelle Edwards, like all of this crazy stuff, getting Kalani to stay. So I guess, yeah, if you have already come up with the last-ditch effort, either that's enough or it's not.
Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Credit Union and Beehive Meals. Christian, thank you so much for your work over the last 2 days. And always, Jake will be back with us tomorrow. Stick around. Hans and Scotty coming up next, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.